me as their friend, their relative, their son, preceptor, benefactor, and supreme deity. They cannot be deprived of their possessions at any time. Well, this is good news for devotees. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. It is stated in Bhagavad Gita that one may elevate himself to the higher planetary systems, even up to Brahmaloka, by dint of pious activities. But when the efforts of such pious activities are finished, one again comes back to this earth to begin a new life of activities. Thus, even though one is promoted to the higher planetary system for enjoyment and a long duration of life, still that is not a permanent settlement. But as far as the devotees are concerned, their assets, the achievement of devotional service, and the consequent opulence of Vaikuntha, even on this planet, are never destroyed. In this verse, Kapiladeva addresses his mother as Santa Rupa, indicating that the opulences of devotees are fixed because devotees are eternally fixed in the Vaikuntha atmosphere, which is called Santa Rupa, because it is in the mode pure goodness, undisturbed by modes of passion and in ignorance. Once one is fixed in the devotional service of the Lord, his position of transcendental service cannot be destroyed, and the pleasure and service simply increase unlimitedly. For the devotees engaged in Krishna consciousness in the Vaikuntha atmosphere, there is no influence of time. In the material world, the influence of time destroys everything. But in the Vaikuntha atmosphere, there is no influence of time or of the demigods, because there are no demigods. But in the Vaikuntha atmosphere, there is no influence of time or of the demigods, because there are no demigods in the Vaikuntha planets. Here, our activities are controlled by different demigods. Even if we move our hand and leg, the action is controlled by the demigods. But in the Vaikuntha atmosphere, there's no influence of the demigods or of time. Therefore, there is no question of destruction. When the time element is present, there is certainty of destruction. But when there is no time element, past, present, or future, then everything is eternal. Therefore, this verse uses the words na nankshyanti, indicating that the transcendental opulences will never be destroyed. The reason for freedom from destruction is also described. The devotees accept the Supreme Lord as the most dear personality and reciprocate with him in different relationships. They accept the Supreme Personality of Godhead as the dearmost friend, the dearmost relative, the dearmost son, the dearmost preceptor, the dearmost well-wisher, or the dearmost deity. The Lord is eternal. Therefore, any relationship in which we accept him is also eternal. It is clearly confirmed herein that the relationships cannot be destroyed, and therefore the opulences of those relationships are never destroyed. Every living entity has the propensity to love someone. We can see that If someone has no object of love, he generally directs his love to a pet animal, like a cat or a dog. Thus, the eternal propensity for love in all living entities is always searching for a place to reside. From this verse, we can learn that we can love the Supreme Personality of Godhead as our dearmost object, as a friend, as a son, as a preceptor, or as a well wisher. And there will be no cheating and no end to such love. We shall eternally enjoy the relationship with the Supreme Lord in different aspects. A special feature of this verse is the acceptance of the Supreme Lord as the supreme preceptor. Bhagavad Gita was spoken directly by the Supreme Lord, and Arjuna accepted Krishna as Guru or spiritual master. Similarly, we should accept only Krishna as the supreme spiritual master. Krishna, of course, means Krishna and his confidential devotees. Krishna is not alone. When we speak of Krishna, Krishna means Krishna in his name, in his form, in his qualities, in his abode, and in his associates. Krishna is never alone, for the devotee of Krishna is not impersonalist. For example, a king is always associated with his secretary, his commander, his servant, and so much paraphernalia. As soon as we accept Krishna and his associates as our preceptors, no ill effects can destroy our knowledge. In the material world, the knowledge which we acquire may change because of the influence of time, but nevertheless, the conclusion received from Bhagavad Gita directly from the speeches of the Supreme Lord Krishna can never change. There is no use interpreting Bhagavad Gita, interpreting Bhagavad Gita. It is eternal. Krishna, the Supreme Lord, should be accepted as one's best friend. He will never cheat. He will always give his friendly advice and friendly protection to the devotee. If Krishna is accepted as a son, he will never die. Here we have a very loving son or child, but the father and mother, or those who are affectionate towards him, always hope, may my son not die. But Krishna actually never will die. Therefore, those who accept Krishna or the Supreme Lord as their son will never be bereft of their son. In many instances, devotees have accepted the deity as a son. In Bengal, there are many such instances, and even after the death of the devotee, the deity performs the Shraddha ceremony for the father. Wow, that's amazing. The relationship is never destroyed. People are accustomed to worship different forms of demigods, but in the Bhagavad Gita, such a mentality is condemned. Therefore, one should be intelligent enough to worship only the Supreme Personality of Godhead in its different forms, such as Lakshmi Narayana, Sita Rama, Radha Krishna. Thus, one will never be cheated. By the worshipping of the demigods, one may elevate himself to the higher planets. But during the dissolution of the material world, the deity and the abode of the deity will be destroyed. But one who worships the Supreme Personality of Godhead is promoted to the Vaikuntha planets, where there is no influence of time, destruction, or annihilation. The conclusion is that the time influence cannot act upon devotees who have accepted the Supreme Personality of Godhead as everything. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Wow, so let's see. go back and take a look at text 38, which is what we're reading. And the verse says, the Lord continued, my dear mother, devotees who receive such transcendental opulences are never bereft of them. Neither weapons nor the chains of time can destroy such opulences, because the devotees accept me as their friend, their relative, their son, preceptor, benefactor, and supreme deity. They cannot be deprived of their possessions at any time. That's really good information. Mm-hmm. And the Lord is guaranteeing the protection of his devotee. And whatever assets the devotee has, the Lord will protect also. This verse says, they cannot be deprived of their possessions at any time. Very interesting point. So, if you want to have protection, the best protection in the world is the protection of the Lord. And he's guaranteeing that you will always not only be protected, but your assets will also be protected. Nobody else can make a promise like that. Only Krishna. Okay, so there are a lot of takeaways in this purport, and it's a very long purport. Let's take a look at this 1 second. Okay, so there's a nice point being made here. The reason for freedom from destruction is also described. The devotees accept the Supreme Lord as the most dear personality and reciprocate with him in different relationships. They accept the Supreme Personality of Godhead as the dearest friend, the dearmost relative, the dearmost son, the dearmost preceptor, the dearmost well-wisher, or the dearmost deity. The Lord is eternal. Therefore, any relationship in which we accept him is also eternal. Very good point. It is clearly confirmed herein that the relationships cannot be destroyed. And therefore, the opulence of those relationships are never destroyed. Every living entity has a propensity to love someone. We can see that if someone has no object of love, he generally directs his love to a pet animal, like a cat or a dog. Thus, the eternal propensity for love in all living entities is always searching for a place to reside. From this verse, we can learn that we can love the Supreme Personality of Godhead as our dearest object, as a friend, as a son, as a preceptor, or as a well-wisher. And there will be no cheating and no end to such love. In other words, if we develop love for Krishna, it becomes eternal. We shall eternally enjoy the relationship with the Supreme Lord in different aspects. A special feature of this verse is the acceptance of the Supreme Lord as the Supreme Preceptor. Bhagavad Gita was spoken directly by the Supreme Lord, and Arjuna accepted Krishna as Guru or spiritual master. Similarly, we should accept only Krishna as the supreme spiritual master. Okay. So he is the original spiritual master, and therefore the supreme spiritual master. And we also have an immediate spiritual master, but we also understand that Krishna is the ultimate spiritual master. So in other words, if we are actually conscious, we have 360 degrees of spiritual masters. And we should know that there's support for us that is guaranteed in this material world. And then here it says, it is clearly confirmed herein that the relationships cannot be destroyed, and therefore the opulences of those relationships are never destroyed. Every living entity has the propensity to love someone. We can see that if someone has no object of love, he generally directs his love to a pet animal like a cat or dog. Thus, the eternal propensity for love in all living entities is always searching for a place to reside. From this verse, we can learn that we can love the Supreme Personality of Godhead as our dearest object, as a friend, as a son, as a preceptor, or as a well-wisher. And there will be no cheating and no end to such love. We shall eternally enjoy the relationship with the Supreme Lord in different aspects. A special feature of this verse is the acceptance of the Supreme Lord as the Supreme Preceptor. Okay, what does preceptor mean? It's like teacher. Look up the word preceptor.
Preceptor is a guru.
Right. Okay. Bhagavad Gita was spoken directly by the Supreme Lord, and Arjuna accepted Krishna as Guru or spiritual master. Similarly, we should accept only Krishna as the supreme spiritual master. Okay, so Krishna is the supreme spiritual master. And if we accept someone as a spiritual master, they must also accept that Krishna is the supreme spiritual master. Otherwise, they should not be accepted as a spiritual master. Everything begins from Krishna. Everything begins from Krishna. That's why it says here, the eternal propensity for love in all living entities is always searching for a place to reside. From this verse, we can learn that we can love the Supreme Personality Godhead as our dearest object, as a friend, as a son, as a preceptor, or as a well-wisher. And there will be no cheating and no end to such love. Now, see, now that's a very important statement. Many times people get cheated in their relationships of so-called love because it's not love, it's lust. And they become, what you would say is, they become very bitter and they no longer trust anyone. But someone puts their trust and love in Krishna will never be let down. And there are many people in this world that say, I don't trust anybody. Have you ever met anyone that said that? Yeah.
Yes, sir. When someone is going through with some like difficult problems like divorce or something,
Yeah.
their trust level is like almost.
They're bitter. Yeah. So if you don't trust anybody, you're living in a hellish consciousness, right? But if you have complete trust in Krishna, then Krishna will never let you down. How do we know that? Well, look at the Pandavas. They were always in trouble, but Krishna was always protecting them. And therefore, that should be enough proof to us that if we trust Krishna and follow Krishna's instructions, Krishna will always be protecting us in every circumstance. But sometimes, if you look at the Pandavas, look at all the difficult situations they were in. So it doesn't mean that everything is always going to be successful. Sometimes there's going to be defeat. But even in defeat, the devotee never loses trust in Krishna. And therefore, they never give up their service to Krishna, even in the most, let's say, most trying conditions. So that type of absolute trust and love for Krishna is what makes a devotee eligible to go back to the spiritual world. And we're going to be tested. Everyone is going to be tested to see if we actually love Krishna or not. So we should not be afraid of those difficult, let's say, tests. It's to make sure that we have absolute faith in the Lord. Okay. So in life, there's always going to be some kind of test to see if we really have love and devotion for Krishna. And we should be not afraid of those difficult times. We should put our complete trust in Krishna and faith that the Lord promises that he's going to always protect his devotees. So we should not doubt that promise. And the proof that we don't doubt that promise is we continue our devotional service regardless of the situation. Yeah. That is the most important thing. Never to give up devotional service of Krishna. Okay, so it says from this verse, we can learn that we can love the Supreme Personality Godhead as our dearmost object, as a friend, as a son, as a preceptor, or as a well-wisher. And there will be no cheating and no end to such love. Now, in this world, there are many examples of people who lost their confidence in other people. They don't trust anybody. And they don't really have any, let's say, loving relationships because they lost their trust and they lost their faith that there exists somebody who is absolutely pure and genuine and never will let them down. And you actually meet people and say, well, I don't trust anybody. So what kind of life is that? That's horrible. All right, there are cheaters. There are many cheaters in this world, but that doesn't mean that there's no cheaters. Uh, and I mean, that doesn't mean that everybody is a cheater. I'm sorry. No, Krishna is not going to cheat you. But people say, "Well, I don't see Krishna." Well, yes, you do. Yes, you do. You come to the temple, you see the deity of Krishna, and you'll hear all about Krishna in the as we're doing now in the Bhagavad Gita and in the Srimad Bhagavatam, with tremendous information about who Krishna is and how to associate with Krishna, how to love Krishna, how to serve Krishna, etc. So there's no excuse. There's no excuse if a person says, "Well, I don't see the Lord." Yeah, of course you see the Lord. You come to the temple and you see the beautiful deity of the Lord. And you can hear the wonderful pastimes of the Lord. So there's no excuse now today. The only excuse is someone is lazy or someone is so negative that they don't believe anything. Just because one has been cheated doesn't mean everybody is a cheater in the world. So that bitterness that comes from, let's say, a bad relationship, that bitterness, that lack of faithful, faithfulness, that is a disease. Just like there's a disease, well, any disease is limiting a person. So our ability to love is also limited by losing faith in Krishna. And so uh, everything begins with faith. Like, for example, when you buy a ticket to go from, let's say, Seattle to Europe, you have faith that uh, the ticket that you buy is valid, and when you get on the plane, you have faith that the plane is going to uh, get you to the destination safely. If you doubted that, you would never get on the plane. So everything begins with faith. Let's say you decide to open a store. Well, you have faith that your store is going to be successful. If you didn't have that faith, you would not open a store. You would not invest in a store. You would just be, uh, uh, let's say, you would not be involved. That's all. So everything begins with faith. Like say you marry someone, well, you have faith that this is a good person, and let's say you invest in something. Well, you have faith that it's a good investment. Let's say you get on an airplane, you have faith the airplane's not going to crash. And let's say you go to a university. Well, you have faith that they're going to give you a valid diploma when you graduate. Right? So everything begins by faith. However, we should put our faith on Krishna because that is the gold standard. And as far as other things go, like having faith in a college, having faith in someone you want to marry, having faith in this or that, that is uh, not absolutely guaranteed. But having faith in Krishna is guaranteed. Krishna also says that my devotee will never perish. So we should accept that statement as uh, the bedrock of our faith, because Krishna makes that statement. We have to have faith that is unequivocal, that is not changeable. It's absolutely the truth. Well, that one truth is there, that Krishna always protects his devotee. That should be where we put our faith. Therefore, you can engage in devotional service without any fear or trepidation or doubt. When you reach that level of faith, then you are directly in contact with Krishna, whether in the material world or the spiritual world. Okay, so here it says the reason for freedom from destruction is also described. The devotees accept the Supreme Lord as the most dear personality and reciprocate with him in different relationships. They accept the Supreme Personality of Godhead as the dearmost friend, the dearmost relative, the dearmost son, the dearmost preceptor, the dearmost well wisher, or the dearmost deity. The Lord is eternal. Therefore, any relationship in which we accept him is also eternal. It is clearly confirmed herein that the relationships cannot be destroyed, and therefore the opulences of those relationships are never destroyed. Every living entity has the propensity to love someone. We can see that if someone has no object of love, he generally directs his love to a pet animal like a cat or a dog. Now let's talk about that for a minute. If you don't love anybody, so you get a cat or a dog to express your love, what will be the outcome of that relationship? At the moment of death, you remember your dog, and the next life you'll be a dog, right? Because you spent many, many years loving the dog, serving the dog, cuddling the dog, sleeping in the same bed with the dog. You know, there are people like that. So they trust the dog. They don't trust other people, but they trust the dog. So maybe there's some reasons to believe that the dog is trustworthy, but that does not change the fact that thinking of the dog at the moment of death is not going to liberate you from the cycle of birth and death. But one thing will be guaranteed: next life you will be a dog. So, so I had a friend of mine, uh, and she bought a dog, and she was always talking about how wonderful her dog is. Whenever someone would talk with her, she would always talk about her pastimes with the dog. So one day, and she had called me up. I said, "Look, when your dog dies, don't buy another dog." I said, because at the moment of death, you're going to remember your dog. You're not going to remember Krishna, because right now your whole life is centered around the dog. You know. So I said, you should make a promise that once your dog dies, you're not going to buy another dog. So it's dangerous because if the last thing you think about is the dog, what's going to happen to you? You're going to become a dog in your next life. Yes.
So Maharaj, I have one good friend. He's in same situation. He has a dog, and every single activity is around dog. And I had visited his home, and I was surprised. Like very precise, like when he work, how the dog is sitting next to him, and how dog is sitting. Like very precise things he was explaining. I was very surprised. I didn't tell anything.
But he's talking about the dog.
Yes, all the time.
Just like we talk about Krishna, he talks about the dog.
But my question is, Maharaj, how to convey this so politely so that it will not hurt their feeling as well? Like how to, I didn't tell anything because I saw like it's so much attachment. So
Yeah.
because if I will speak anything, it will become like I'm like a
anti-dog.
yeah. So how to at least
I had a friend. I said I had a friend, and I told her when the dog dies, don't get another dog. She said, "Okay." A dog's going to die. They don't last more than 12 years, 15 years, so. But, there's not much you can say for people who have such a relationship with a dog because uh, they have faith in the dog and the dog completely depends on them. So it becomes a very strong relationship, hard to break. They have more faith in the dog than in people. Yeah. So best thing is not to have a dog. It's very difficult taking care of the dog. The dog's got to pass stool, and urine, and you have to have an arrangement for the dog to do that in the house. Then you have to take the dog out for a walk, right? Then sometimes the dog gets sick. You have to take it to the veterinarian. Veterinarians cost a lot of money. And then sometimes the dog needs an operation. I knew this one lady. She loved her dog so much that she agreed to have an operation for the dog. It cost $4,000. So you're gonna end up spending a lot of money on the dog. So some people swear by the dog, and therefore it becomes a limiting relationship. It limits what you can do. I know this one man, and I say, well, maybe you can come to this program. No, I got to take care of the dog. So, you can't bring the dog to to the program. So he says, well, I got to stay home and take care of the dog. So the dog will limit your activities and your thoughts. You have to pay a lot of attention to the dog, right? You just can't buy a dog and then lock it up and leave for a program. Some people do that, but it's not good for the dog. The dog gets worried. I may that the master might never come back because they locked the door. Okay, so here we have the reason for freedom from destruction is also described. The devotees accept the Supreme Lord as the most dear personality and reciprocate with him in different relationships. They accept the Supreme Personality of Godhead as the dearmost friend, the dearmost relative, and the dearmost son, the dearmost preceptor, the dearmost well-wisher, or the dearmost deity. The Lord is eternal. Therefore, any relationship in which we accept him is also eternal. Well, right there is the best, let's say, reason why we should not have a dog, because a dog is not eternal. But the relationship with Krishna is eternal. Right? And therefore, if we're going to spend a lot of time taking care of a dog, it's going to take time away from taking care of Krishna. So it's better to have a deity of the Lord and spend all your time taking care of the deity rather than having a dog and taking care of the dog. And by the way, whenever you have a dog and the dog lives in a house, you don't notice it. Only people who come to visit you notice it. The whole house smells like a dog. They don't notice it, but someone that comes from the outside, they notice the whole house smells like a dog.
And whereas everywhere we find the hair, like
Yeah.
the dog hair and the
Yeah.
couch and everywhere you can.
Yeah.
And also, a lot of people, they'll take the dog, even though they cannot afford or they don't have capacity to take it. And then the dogs undergo a lot of abuse.
Really?
Yeah. And then they just abandon them. Or they don't take care of their food or,
Oh,
so I think they just fight because of their own pleasure. But
Initially,
then they
won't take care of just like any other toy.
Yeah. Another thing.
you mean they let them just run away or something? Or they abandon the dog?
Sometimes they abandon, sometimes they lock when they go outside, they don't make sure they're being taken care properly when they are not at home, or no proper health care, that kind of stuff.
Wow.
Because of either they are not financially sufficient enough.
Yeah. There's this German author. Anyway, he wrote a story about a man who had a dog. And when the dog was very young, he was completely dependent on the man. But as the dog got bigger, he sometimes would run outside. He'd always come back, but he'd run away, come back, because you can't keep a dog in a house 24 hours a day, every day of the year, Because sometimes the dog would go out on its own and then he would come back. The man purposely injured the dog so he couldn't go out. You know, so the relation became like a sick relationship. So here we see a lot of perverted things that happen when people want to, have love from a dog, and if they see the dog is a little bit independent, they might do something like the man in the story, like purposely injuring the dog to complete the dependence on them.
There is one recent story. I think he's a very rich guy, millionaire or billionaire. So in his will, he has so much attachment of one of his dogs. So in his will, what he wrote was when he's dead, he wanted his dog to be dead with an injection. There is one word. So he wants his dog to I don't know what his belief is. Basically, he wants his
Die
dog
along with him.
die along with him. Okay. That's what is written in the will. But I think that did not happen though. Yeah.
Wow.
Hare
Well,
uh,
but
Yes.
there
Hare
are other
Krishna
people.
Maharaj.
Yes.
Sorry, Maharaj, question. So, yeah, let's take the example of dog. So, generally, people have dogs or something because they are looking for the love or reciprocation also. I mean, dog is a kind of a symbol of very honesty and all this. I mean, he's very loyal, not honesty, but loyalty. So, it's kind of a loyalty. If somebody has to give example, a lot of people give the example of a dog because he's very loyal to his master, whatever it is. So, my question is, um, for as a part and parcel of Krishna, right? As Krishna just need everybody's love. Actually, he doesn't need anything, right? So, for example, as a human being, our um, we sometimes have like that kind of hankering. We have some qualities of like what Krishna has, but in minute proportion. And then in that case, we also looking for here in the purport they say that we are always giving trying to give looking for love and rest of it. So love somebody, but at the same time we also expect love from somebody else. So how to overcome that? Because as a part and parcel, I think Krishna also expect that the people or the devotees should love him, not anything, right? So being a part and parcel of Krishna, we also have that kind of feeling sometimes, not but that somebody else. So how do we overcome it, or do we need to really overcome that feeling?
Well, in this verse it says, Krishna, Supreme Lord, should be accepted as one's best friend. Okay? He will never
Yeah.
cheat. He will always give his friendly advice and friendly protection to the devotee. If Krishna is accepted as a son, he will never die. Here we have a very loving son or child, but the father and mother, or those who are affectionate towards him, always hope, may my son not die. But Krishna actually never will die. Therefore, those who accept Krishna or the Supreme Lord as their son will never be bereft of their son. In many instances, devotees have accepted the deity as a son. In Bengal, there are many such instances, and even after the death of the devotee, the deity forms the Shraddha ceremony. This is an amazing statement. The deity performs the Shraddha ceremony for the father. The relationship is never destroyed. People are accustomed to worship different forms of demigods, but in Bhagavad Gita, such a mentality is condemned. Therefore, one should be intelligent enough to worship only the Supreme Personality of Godhead in its different forms, such as Lakshmi Narayana, Sitarama, and Radha Krishna. Thus, one will never be cheated. By worshiping the demigods, one may elevate himself to the higher planets. But during the dissolution of the material world, the deity and the abode of the God and the abode of the deity will be destroyed. But one who worships the supreme personality of Godhead is promoted to the Vaikuntha planets, where there is no influence of time, destruction, or annihilation. The conclusion is that the time influence cannot act upon devotees who have accepted the Supreme Personality of Godhead as everything. Well, the people accept their dog as everything, they're in a big problem. If you're going to accept someone as your everything, it should be the Supreme Personality of Godhead, because Krishna is eternal. And the relationship with the devotee will become eternal. The relationship with the dog is not going to be eternal. So there's sat and asat. So the devotee is more interested in sat, what is eternal. And the materialists, they're interested in what is asat, temporary. So they develop all these temporary relationships. And little by little, the let's say the influence of time takes away all those things they're attached to. People die, houses can burn, and so forth, and eventually they end up with nothing that they were attached to. Everything is lost. So if you're going to, spend so much time, with a dog, it's better to spend all that time with the deity of Krishna, because the deity of Krishna it's never gonna be lost. Because even if the deity, let's say, burns, your relationship is not ended. If your dog burns, your relationship is ended. But with the deity, you can never be bereft of the deity, because you can always get another deity, right? Or you can maintain your meditation always on the deity. So in that way, one is never bereft of the deity. And of course, there's the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, which puts you in direct relationship to the deity or Krishna. So the devotee is never bereft, is never alone. But a person who has a dog and organizes their whole life around, the dog can die. Then what are you going to do? Okay, some people buy another dog, but that only means that at the moment of death they're going to remember the dog. But if we spend our time worshiping the deity of Krishna, it's a very good chance at the moment of death we can remember Krishna, go back to Godhead. That ends all our problems. Remembering the dog at the end of life is not going to solve our problem. So we have to be careful what we become attached to. Some people are attached to their money. So they're always thinking about their money. Some people are attached to their dog. So they're always thinking about the dog. But devotees are always attached to Krishna. So they're always thinking about Krishna. Therefore, at the moment of death, they can remember Krishna and go back to Godhead. We have to be very careful of what we become attached to. Okay, got any questions? There's a lot of information in this purport. A lot of information.
Coming to this dog, actually, is owning a dog even a moral thing? Because I think my understanding is with whoever is owning is for their own pleasure, and then that comes at the cost of their suffering, especially at the hands of the people who won't be able to take care of them.
What's interesting is, let's say you go back 100 years, 150 years. No Indian had a dog.
Right?
Yes. There were dogs. There were plenty of dogs. They're all running wild. Right?
British, now they are following the Western country.
Stopping Maharaj unnecessary.
But irrespective of India,
But nowadays, you see Indians with dogs.
they're doing a lot of YouTube, Instagram, sleeping with them, eating with them, and all that kind of stuff.
My God.
But is it a moral thing, irrespective of who is doing?
A moral thing to adopt a dog?
Adopt a dog, keeping the dog within the boundaries of the four walls.
If you're a devotee, that's a really bad thing to do because that means you're going to be thinking about the dog all the time, right? And that could stop you from thinking of Krishna at the moment of death. Dogs are not meant to be pets. They're not meant to be because they're unclean. Anybody who has a dog, right? And you walk into their house, the first thing you notice is the smell of the dog. The people living in the house don't notice that smell anymore. So right there's the reason why not to have a dog.
Morality, from a dog's perspective.
So, Hare Krishna Maharaj. So, based on what you explained and what I understood, so what you are saying this is what I understood is yes, as a living being, we have that hankering of either giving the love or receiving the love from someone. But the object should be always Krishna rather than other living beings because Krishna is the what ultimate Sat. Is that right? I mean, since he is the eternal and Sat, that's why
Yes,
we
of
need to
course.
focus always on the Krishna for giving also and receiving also.
See, when a dog comes and starts licking you, right? Say the dog comes, starts licking your face. You're saying, oh, he loves me. But the dog is thinking, oh, one day I will eat you. You see, because a dog is an animal and they eat flesh, right? What do you feed the dog? You feed them meat, right? So when they're licking your face, they're getting the taste of your flesh, and they're thinking, one day I'm going to eat you. Yeah. Of course, dog lovers they would get really angry hearing what I just said.
And Bhagavad
Then we will
Gita,
not be friends with them.
specifically, interesting thing is Krishna says like we should get to the point of detachment even from our own family, right?
Yes.
So obviously, that includes all the extended family like dogs and everything. So, but people get detached from the family and attached to the dog.
Krishna, what if somebody says, I will use dog for Krishna service?
Oh, you can use.
Like, for example, protecting the from thieves.
But outside.
But outside, right? They have to.
Yeah, you have to have a dog house in the yard, right? You don't let the dog in the house. The dog wants to get into the house, but no.
So we are supposed to detach from the family and attach to God, and 99% of the cases it's like
When it says
detach.
detached from the family, it means that you understand that the family is temporary.
Yeah.
You don't think that that the family is all in all.
That
And so therefore you know that one day people are going to die. You're also going to die. So therefore your real attachment should be to Krishna. Attachment to the family, well, you have some responsibilities that you accepted or you created yourself, right? But therefore a time comes where you have to downsize all those attachments and prepare yourself for the ultimate, the moment of death. You see, we build up a lot of attachments and family attachments and things like that. But we also have to, at a certain time, downsize all those attachments. Otherwise, at the moment of death, we will think of the family, take birth again in the material world. So if you look at the Pandavas, right, at a certain point, they all went up into the mountains and prepared themselves to die. And they got away from, all the wars and obligations that they had. So we also have to break all those attachments that we have with family and so forth at a certain point in our life. Otherwise, we're going to die still attached to the family and not be attached to Krishna.
Detachment doesn't mean that leaving the family.
What do you mean by that?
Yeah, you can, as a family, you can serve together Krishna. You're attached to Krishna, but detached. This is my family. I will only do things to serve them, like that. Kind of attachment.
Well, they might throw you out of the house.
Then
Well, you're not doing anything, so let's get rid of this guy.
it's good, Maharaj.
I stayed overnight in this person's house, and the father was a very religious person. I didn't actually see the father. I slept overnight in the person's house, and he was like a devotee. The father was a follower of, or he was a Sikh, right? And the time I spent in the house, I never saw the father. He was constantly chanting these Sikh mantras all day long, and most of the night also, at least part of the night. And I was thinking to myself, here's a man. He's he's reading the Granth Sahib, and reciting it all the time. I was thinking to myself, he's really, like a devotee, right? Okay, Granth Sahib is not equal to, Bhagavad Gita or Srimad Bhagavatam, but it is something spiritual. And this man was very dedicated because he knew he was going to die soon. Right? That's why all day long he was chanting the mantras from the Granth Sahib. Now, maybe the day I stayed in their house, that was the day that he was chanting, but it looked like he was doing it continually. So some people come to the realization, look, I'm going to die, and I should prepare myself. And now I'm not going to be interested in anything else. I'm simply going to chant Hare Krishna and prepare myself to leave this body. So that is something that every one of us is going to experience, and we have to prepare ourselves to set aside everything and just chant and engage in devotional service at one point, because we might be sick or we might be very old or whatever. And to prepare for that, we should be always chanting and always engaged in some devotional service. And then at one point, we give up all kinds of responsibilities and just chant and serve and not be worried about making money, not be worried about the family, etc. We have to come to that point. If we don't, then we won't be able to remember Krishna at the moment of death. It'll be very difficult. Hare Krishna.
One question on this. At that time, when the person is old, sick, at that time, how a person will not get disturbed because person is attached to body as well. So let's say even though in young age, if something happens little bit to body, might get disturbed. And think about when person is in that stage, about to die and helpless. So how not to get disturbed about because of the problem and give full focus to Krishna.
That's why we chant Hare Krishna. We're training ourselves to think of Krishna always. Right? Practice makes perfect. So every day we're chanting around. And even at the moment of death, we will be able to chant. If you don't chant your round, how are you going to be able to chant at the moment of death? That's not going to happen. But if we're always chanting, and we know that, any moment I could die, it's very easy to die. You can have an accident, you can have a heart attack. So many things can happen. So therefore, a devotee thinks at any moment I can die. Therefore, he's always trying to chant Hare Krishna. And the materialist thinks I'm going to still live another 40 years or 60 years. So therefore, I'm going to continue engaging in sense gratification. And if I get old and sick, then I might chant Hare Krishna. And it doesn't really work like that. But the devotee thinks I could die at any moment. Right? Therefore, a devotee is always chanting Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare. So there's different culture between the devotee and the non-devotee. Non-devotee thinks, oh, I got another 40 years. You know, so I don't have to chant Hare Krishna. And the devotee thinks, I could die in 1 minute or 1 second. So the devotee is always chanting. Now, is that a selfish thing? No, because the purpose of life is to always remember Krishna, right? Always remember Krishna and never forget Krishna. That's the life of a devotee. And the materialist thinks, well, I got another 40 years, I'm okay. I don't have to chant Hare Krishna now. Or I got a lot of money in the bank, you know, I have enough money to take care of my family and myself for the next 50 years, so I don't have to worry about anything. But that doesn't guarantee that they don't die in the next minute. So the devotee thinks clearly, I could die in the next minute. And the materialist thinks, I still got another 40 years. But these are let's say, the culture. The devotee knows that at any minute he can die. So therefore, he's very concerned about always remembering Krishna. That should be our culture, always remembering Krishna. Thank you very much. But this an amazing statement in this purport that says the deity performs the Shraddha ceremony for the father. In Bengal, there are many such instances. Let's see, wait a minute. Those who accept Krishna or the Supreme Lord as their son will never be bereft of their son. In many instances, devotees have accepted the deity as a son. In Bengal, there are many such instances. And even after the death of the devotee, the deity performs the Shraddha ceremony for the father. Have you ever heard that statement before? That's an amazing statement, that the deity will perform the Shraddha ceremony for the father. An amazing statement. I never read that.
But we can, like, Krishna don't need to do Shraddha ceremony, right? It's like more on material ground, but still that he can perform. That's my understanding. Is it correct understanding?
Well, it says here, in Bengal, there are many such instances. It says, in many instances, devotees have accepted the deity as a son. In Bengal, there are many such instances. And even after the death of the devotee, the deity performs the Shraddha ceremony for the father. The relationship is never destroyed. It's an incredible statement, you know, unless I'm misreading it, but it sounds like the relationship is so, let's say, intense between the devotee and the deity that if the devotee dies, the deity will perform the Shraddha ceremony. In Bengal, there are many instances, and many such instances. And even after the death of the devotee, the deity performs the Shraddha ceremony for the father. The relationship is never destroyed. Therefore, those who accept Krishna or the Supreme Lord as their son will never be bereft of their son. In many instances, devotees have accepted the deity as a son. In Bengal, there are many such instances. And even after the death of the devotee, the deity performs the Shraddha ceremony for the father. So, if I'm reading it correctly, the relationship is so strong between the deity and the devotee that if the devotee dies, the deity will perform the Shraddha ceremony. An amazing statement. Am I reading it right?
Yeah,
Is that what you
Yes,
understand?
yes,
Yeah.
I think this question is because deity in this case is Lord Krishna. According to Krishna consciousness, we don't actually have obligations for Pitru Puja and all this stuff. So why is that Lord himself is doing that?
Lord can do it.
I mean, he can do it. Maybe that's how he's showing love, reciprocation. That's like needed. That's just how we can perceive. Because otherwise, how does he express love? So we can,
Well, it says, therefore, those who accept Krishna or the Supreme Lord as their son will never be bereft of their son. In many instances, devotees have accepted the deity as a son. In Bengal, there are many such instances, and even after the death of the devotee, the deity performs the Shraddha ceremony for the father. The relationship is never destroyed. People are accustomed to worship different forms of demigods, but in Bhagavad Gita, such a mentality is condemned. Therefore, one should be intelligent enough to worship only Supreme Personality Godhead in its different forms, such as Lakshmi Narayan, Sitaram, Radha Krishna. Thus, one will never be cheated. Okay, so here it's clearly saying that, that the deity can perform the Shraddha ceremony. That's an amazing statement. Amazing statement. There are a lot of mysterious things we don't know. But now we're learning them. That's why we should read every day. Srimad Bhagavatam. Okay. I guess we'll end right there. Now we know that the deity can perform the Shraddha ceremony for us.
we are like fully secure.
Yeah, secure. No doubt about it.
I guess that thing is significant from the perspective that if somebody doesn't have a child, I mean, the effort of the deity is sufficient.
Accepting a deity as a son is, then the son is doing his all duties. This one line that gives strong faith. The relationship is never destroyed.
Yeah.
That gives a lot of positivity. That even though we are dying, like this body is dying, we are still continuing.
Well, you never really die. It's just the body. So the relationship is there. It's eternal. Hari Bol.
Really,
We should put this up on the board somewhere,
we can write a quote for the day.
Yeah, good.
We can use the board to write the quote for the day.
In Bengal, there are many instances, and even after the death of the devotee, the deity performs the Shraddha ceremony for the father. The relationship is never destroyed. There it is.
No.
Therefore, those who accept Krishna or the Supreme Lord as their son will never be bereft of their son. In many instances, devotees have accepted the deity as a son. In Bengal, there are many such instances, and even after the death of the devotee, the deity performs the Shraddha ceremony for the father. The relationship is never destroyed. Haribol.
Hari,
I'm going to meditate on this all day long today.
Hari, Hari.
Hare Krishna. Thank you very much.